Thank you guys all so much for being here today, another week. My name is Amaia Perez. I'm the Online Programming Director of RfR, and I'm here with Medelin Nolasco, who is our co-host today, and she's also the social hangout host when she's not co-hosting. So Medelin, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you all for coming back again this week. And the first thing we're going to do, yeah, of course, thank you so much. The first thing we're going to do is go over the poll. So Medelin, I'm going to let you do that.
The first one, have you had difficult conversations with your family or friends regarding religion? Next, have you felt judged by your family or friends after leaving religion? And third, have you felt disconnected from your family or friends since leaving religion? And we'll keep this up here. I want to, before I give it back to you, Amaia, give a shout out to the ACD, the Atheist Community of Discord, for always streaming our videos. Thank you much, and everyone watching there. And I'll pass it over to you, Amaia.
Yeah, thank you, Medelin. Amazing. So I'll just start by explaining a bit what it is that we do in RfRx for those of you who are new. So RfRx is a series of online weekly sessions where we bring in guests to discuss different topics that are relevant to anyone who is either living religion or has already left religion. So this is a place to provide good advice and coping skills for anyone that needs them right now. And if you have any sort of questions, any feedback, any guest ideas, any topics ideas, you can send us an email to rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And for those of you who are RfR volunteers, you can also find me in the Slack, so you can just send me a private message. That should be also okay. And if you want to see any of our previous RfRx sessions, you will find them in our YouTube channel. I think this week or next week, we're finalizing all the videos of 2020, so we will soon begin with the 2021 videos. So really encourage you guys to subscribe and join our YouTube channel, because if you ever missed any, that's where you will find them. And I just want to tell you a bit about what it is that we do in RfR in general, because we do offer other services. So RfR has a mission statement, and that is that we offer hope, healing, and support to those who are struggling with issues of religion and unbelief. So the first thing that we offer, healing. So the way we offer healing is via our helpline. I was going to say helpline chat, but we also have a helpline call thing. So it's a two-way system. You can either chat with our agents or you can call our agents. And the idea of this is that you will find someone that you can talk to, and they will listen to you with no judgment or criticism. They will be very empathetic. They are trained to listen to any issues that you may have which are related to religion. So if you feel like you could just use someone just listening to you, I highly encourage you contact one of our helpline agents. And if you do want to do that, all you need to do is go to our website, recoveringfromreligion.org. And if you go to like the bottom side of the screen to the left, I think it is, you should find like a bubble, and then you can chat with our available agents, and you will also have a phone number that you can call. And then the second part of healing, it's also our resource page. So we have a website in which we have collected a very large number of resources, and this includes everything from articles, books, podcasts, videos, probably movies, even just any sort of format that you can imagine. So if you want to find resources for specific topics or specific religions, so for example, if you're looking for resources related to fear of hell, I'm sure you will find something there for you. If you are an ex-Christian who is looking for something specific to your religion, you will also find something there. So it's basically a very large number of resources that you can find in one website that are reliable, that you can hopefully use, and they will be helpful to you. So that's healing. And then Medelin, do you want to explain hope and support, please?
Yes, so we provide hope by sharing and listening to personal stories. We are all in this together. We have a blog and a podcast that I'll link here in the chat, and that's for hope. For support, we have peer support groups in the Secular Therapy Project. The peer support groups are face-to-face in-person meetings. There's over 50 of these now spread across the world. They're virtual right now because of the COVID restrictions, but you can find the nearest one to you at the Meetup website that we'll also link in the chat box. The Secular Therapy Project connects you with a licensed and secular mental health care provider. They are carefully screened for criteria of having appropriate licensing in their state or country.
Thank you, Medelin. In RfR, we also offer the online community. And this is basically an online space where you can meet people that share similar backgrounds as you. So we have divided our platform in different groups. So let's say you are someone who is part of the LGBTQ plus community and you only want to discuss issues related to that, or not just related to that, but you want to talk to people that are also from the LGBTQ plus community. We have a group for you. If you are, I don't know, like a female who only wants to talk to other females, we have a group for you. We'll have all sorts of different groups exclusively for families, for Australians, just anything you can imagine. So if you think you could use one of these services, all you need to do is contact one of our helpline agents. So again, all you need to do to contact them is either give us a call or chat with us in our website. And they will let you know if you meet the criteria to join one of these groups. And if you do, then you'll be able to be a part of the group and the community. So I really encourage you try to join if this is something that you feel like could be useful for you. And the last thing I wanted to talk about before we actually jump to the RfRx session is volunteering, because Recovering from Religion is exclusively run by volunteers. So we would love to have you on board in the charity. This has definitely been a fantastic way for me to develop a few new skills, also meet new people. I never knew I would, meet so many people that share such similar, different backgrounds from me and come from different countries and have completely different life experiences. So I highly encourage you to join us. I feel like most volunteers that join our group say that it's, I feel like it has helped themselves more that, they're helping others. So I highly encourage you to join us. We have all sorts of different roles. You could be a support group leader, you could be a social hangout host, you could be a helpline agent, you could be so many different things. So yeah, just a little encouragement. If you're on the fence, I do highly encourage you to join us because it's always a great time. And now with that said, Medelin, do you want to explain the meeting format before we jump into welcome Rebecca?
Yes, so really quickly, the discussion will be roughly 1 hour. After that, we'll have a Q&A section for 20 to 30 minutes. We ask that you type your questions in the chat box and we'll take note of them. And after that, there'll be a hangout hour, which is a loose term because it can last many. And we'll have hangout hosts and we'll turn off the recording and everyone will be able to unmute, etc. That's it for the format.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, then without further ado, I'm just going to introduce you all to Rebecca Williams, who, I see a lot of recurring faces, so I'm sure most of you already know who she is because we keep bringing her back and she's generous enough to offer her time and all the work and effort. So Rebecca, welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, I'm happy to be back.
Cool. So, I usually introduce the guest, but lately I've gotten into this habit of just being lazy and let the speakers introduce themselves. And since you have been here so many times, I'm just going to let you, tell a bit about yourself and just let us know what it is that you do. I know you have a business, so yeah.
So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. I have a group private practice called Inland Empire Couples Counseling, and I specialize in helping mixed faith and religious secular couples have connected, intimate, satisfying relationships. I will say sometimes that one of my therapy superpowers is helping people connect across the religious secular divide. And I'm in the process of developing an online course for mixed faith couples, and I'm offering a little teaser, a free mini course for that. And I know the link is in the resources that we'll put at the end of in the chat at the end of this.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Thank you, Rebecca. So obviously the topic of today is how to deal with religious in-laws and extended family. So how do we begin with this very broad topic? I feel like it's, you could take so many different angles. So what is the first thing that you would address?
So I was looking, as I was getting ready to do this presentation, I was kind of looking for themes of like, what are the things where people say that they have the most trouble with dealing with their religious in-laws or extended family. And the things that I came up with as, being kind of general categories were judgment, disconnection, and awkward conversations. So those are the three big things that we will talk about today. Do you want me to just jump right in with talking about judgment?
Definitely, yes. Go for it.
So maybe this is just my style. If you've heard me talk on one of these before, like us, I'm not going to let us off the hook, us, secular folks. So that's right where we are going to start with how easy it can be to look at those judgy religious people. And the problem is that they think things about us, and if they would just stop being so judgy, everything would be fine. But I think that is, it's human nature, but it's also not the whole story to just be pointing the finger at the other person and say that's really the problem here. So to start out with, I'm holding the mirror up to ourselves, because it's really not how healthy relationships work, that we just always look at what the other person needs to do to change. And so when we're looking at having great relationships with our religious extended family members, we also have to be willing to look at ourselves. I will call it keeping your side of the street clean. Like we're on different sides and we're going to meet in the middle. And part of doing that is that you have to keep your side of the street clean. So are you condescending, unkind, or unwilling to compromise? Are you actually living according to your values in the way that you interact with these people? If you look back at the hardest conversations or the most tense times with those people, are you proud of how you acted? Would you set yourself up as an example? Like, this is how these things should be handled? Or is there, work there that you could do too in how you talk with them? And then, do you treat them how you want them to treat you?
Mm-hmm. So a bit of self-criticism in that aspect of not saying, oh yeah, everyone else is in fault and I am amazing, I'm perfect, I'm right, because obviously, if you're religious, you're just crazy or something like that. So yeah, that's a great point, Rebecca. I think a lot of people, myself included, do have that reaction. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And these aren't like always really comfortable questions to ask yourself. And at the same time, it's important. It's important that we act without judgment, to have successful relationships with our religious family members. And my word choice is intentional there, in acting without judgment instead of being without judgment, because everybody has judgments and they're like, that's okay. You might really believe that their worldview is harmful, it's ridiculous, it's illogical, and I'm not here to talk you out of that or tell you that you shouldn't think those things. And when you sit down with that person, or when you're at, the holiday dinner or the family reunion or whatever it is, do you act that out with them? Do you treat them with disrespect because of those beliefs or because of your differences? And I think that it's important to act without judgment, or act without being condescending in the way that we treat our family members. Because that's really what we're talking about here. Is it's not just any old religious person. These are people who are part of your extended family and who you have some connection with and who, presumably care about you. So.
Yeah. And how would you address when someone else is judgmental towards us? Because of course, I'm sure that happens to so many people. So once we have, make sure that we have cleared ourselves of any judgment as much as possible anyway. How would you deal with someone else being judgmental to us, especially someone that you need to see fairly often, as it sometimes happens with your family or in-laws or even friends, really?
Right. So yeah, this shows up in sometimes comments direct, and sometimes just more subtle things about you're going to hell, you've been deceived, you're not going to be with us in heaven, whatever the judgments are that the family puts upon you. And I want to say, before we get too much into here's the checklist of the things that you do, I just want to recognize that that's really painful. And if you're on the receiving end of that and that hurts, you're human. Again, we're talking about family, and these are the groups that we want to belong to. It's normal for us to want to have acceptance and approval from our family members. And so when we're on the receiving end of some judgment from them, of course, that's going to be painful. Sometimes it's hurtful to us because there might be a part of us who still wonders if that's true. Depending on what your own experience has been exiting religion, or, the religious group that you came from, you might, a part of you knows that it's not true and this is the right choice for you. And yet when it's your grandparent or your aunt and uncle or whoever who's telling you these things, some of that old stuff might get activated, and you go, well, am I deceived? Is this wrong? And also, it can be a frustrating place to be if you previously had thought those things about people who left your faith. And people can be stuck kind of between a rock and a hard place, or in a little bit of a double bind, where you go, I know that I'm not going to hell, or I know that I'm not being deceived by the devil. And yet I know exactly why they think those things of me, because I used to be that person and say those things to someone else. And I also know, because I used to be in that position, that there's probably nothing I can do that will convince them otherwise. And so now, as the formerly religious person, you're just kind of stuck, having all this swirl of feelings and the recipient of all of this judgment. And then, what do you do about it? So that's why I said, before we even get to the what do you do, I wanted to take a moment to recognize that those feelings are all normal reactions to being in this really difficult situation. So here's my what to do's. The first would be, just let yourself acknowledge the feeling. Feel whatever is there. If it's, frustration, anger, grief, pain, rejection, whatever, it will be uncomfortable. Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. And avoiding it or denying the reality of what's going on doesn't make it go away. If you're denying it, it will just go underground and come out in some other way, or continue to kind of torment you from the inside. So you take a little bit of time to sit with the discomfort of whatever those feelings are. And then, as far as their judgments of you go, sometimes you might just let it go. You might decide there's nothing I'm going to do to change this person. And so I'm just going to, for whatever reason, you might let it slide. Or you might choose to communicate the impact on or to the other people. Hey, when you say these things, this is how that makes me feel. Can you please not say that to me anymore? And I went back and looked at the talk I did in July on boundaries, has some tips for how to recognize those things and how to, put it into words, if anyone wants to go back and watch that one. And on, if you do decide to let it go, I think really being able to let it go requires that you recognize that there are some things that you just can't change. you might not be able to change the way that these people think about you, or maybe their opinion of your actions. And that's sad. And it's also outside of your control. And you may cause yourself quite a bit of grief and anxiety trying to get them to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of being in relationship with these people might mean that you have to live with the discomfort of not being able to change your judgments or their judgments about you. And I'll say that a mindfulness practice can help a lot there in learning how to separate yourself from other people, and also how to allow yourself to experience what's happening, to just like experience those feelings, let them kind of move through you, and then also know that you're okay.
And going back a bit to making sure that we are not judgmental towards others, do you have any tips for that? Because I know I find it very difficult if someone, holds a very different opinion from me, especially on a moral basis, as religion often does. It's just so difficult to not feel like you're just wrong. And why do you think that? I feel like it's very difficult to not be judgmental. So do you have any sort of quick tips to avoid those thoughts?
I think that it is important to make a distinction between your belief and your action. So you can believe that they are absolutely wrong about, what they believe, and that your course of action for your life is correct. And that doesn't mean that it's okay to treat them with disrespect, right? So there's like making a distinction between what we think and how we act. We can think differently and still expect that we treat the other person with, mutual respect and dignity and that type of thing. I find it can be really useful to reverse the roles. If you're not sure if you're being super judgmental, what would it be like if that person said to you what you're saying to them? Just like flip it around. And if you would hate to be on the receiving end of that, that means you're probably acting in a judgmental or a disrespectful or unrealistic way to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, also making a distinction between the person and the belief system. Mm-hmm. So you can disagree with their belief system and still be respectful to the human being who is sitting right in front of you. And that can sometimes help to separate that out. Like, yeah, I disagree with what they believe, and I can still be kind to them as a fellow human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that makes perfect sense. For me personally, it's just that I have a what is called a resting bitch face. So with someone, like when I disagree with someone and they say something that I find ridiculous, I find it really, really difficult to not like reflect that in my face, even if I'm trying to be kind. I struggle with that. But yeah, I think definitely understand that it's not there as a person, it's just their ideas. It's definitely a good tip, because then I can hopefully like separate those two. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I think even if somebody notices the change in the emotion on your face, and they go, "Whoa, what, what's that about?" Or they call you on it or something, you can say, like that's just really interesting idea, or I completely disagree with what you just said. Mm-hmm. And you're careful to say that you're disagreeing with the idea, you're disagreeing with what the person just said, which is very different from being like, "You're an idiot. How could you believe something like that?" Because now you've made it personal and about the person and their character, and not about the idea that you're discussing or the thing that they said that you're like, what? You even can say something like, if they notice the expression on your face, you could say something like, "Wow, I totally do not agree with that at all, but like, carry on. I'm interested to hear what you have to say." Like, you're still interested in the person. You still care about them, and you don't. Sometimes that can actually be freeing, where you don't have to pretend to agree, or you don't have to pretend to like what they're saying. You can still like them as a person and think that their ideas are a little bit wacky.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Anything else to mention on the judgment side?
Yes. Yeah. So as we're moving into talking about disconnection, I think it's worth noting that judgments, or when we're the recipient of the, judgy behavior from other people, is that often masks grief, loss, the fear of loss. It can often mask a sense of powerlessness, where maybe your family member, from their perspective, they love you so much and they're fearful of losing you, or that you may already be lost, and they might feel powerless to change that. And what's coming across to you might be this, judgy, shaming kind of action and behavior. And underneath that, they love you and they're terrified and they don't know what else to do. Or maybe they don't quite have the right skills to just be able to tell you, I love you so much and I'm scared. And that comes across as, what are you doing? You're going to hell. You need to come back. And I wanted to make this distinction that people don't often talk about disconnection. But as I was coming up with these themes, I thought about, okay, so judgment is a thing that happens internally, and then it seeps out of us in how we talk to other people, right? We're going to get to awkward conversations, and that's, again, a very overt, oh wow, it's uncomfortable. It's this thing that's happening between us. And the disconnection is at the heart of a lot of the things that are really difficult when we're navigating these relationships with our religious family members. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to say that these things are painful, again, because it's the natural human experience to want to be accepted to our groups. This is how humans evolved, that we're a social species, and this is how we have survived and thrived, is in connection with other humans. Mm-hmm. And so when we experience something that separates us from our group, from our family or social group, it produces anxiety, and that anxiety often comes with a pull to reconnect with the other people. That's what your family's trying to do for you. And it's also why it's so painful and so difficult for so many people to step away from their religious groups or from their, family members who are religious. And, you might be wondering well, if I don't fit in here anymore, then where do I fit? And so I want to take a minute just to normalize that for people. If you're feeling some of that sadness, the disconnection, it means that you're a normal human, and not that you've sinned or that you feel badly and therefore you need to return to the group. It can be really confusing for people sometimes too, when you know that this is the best choice for you and you step away from the religion and then you miss it, or you feel you feel bad, almost guilty that you still want to be close to those people because they're ridiculous, or because of, you don't agree with what they believe in. And yet at the same time, those are your people. They are especially if we're talking about grandparents, aunts and uncles, your own parents, these are the people who raised you and watched out for you and taught you what it was to be a good human and all those kind of things. And so when you experience a disconnection from them, you're just being a normal human, that causes you some sadness or brings you some anxiety. And I also wanted to make sure that people know that this is a thing that can go both ways, that sometimes we don't often see when we're the person who's leaving, that your in-laws or your, aunts and uncles or your grandparents or whoever, they might be wondering exactly the same things. Are you rejecting me now? They love you and they see that you're different, and they might wonder, am I not going to be welcome with you? Am I not going to be safe with you? Mm-hmm. Just like you want them to be accepting and loving and feel like you belong there with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's I guess sort of reaction before they even see you, like rejecting them, of a sort of defense mechanism, I guess. If you think the other person is going to reject you, you may want to reject them first, or you may want to just let them know that they're still welcomed, even if the way they're communicating that is not perhaps the best. So things like saying, you're going to hell, you can still come back. Well, that's not necessarily great thing to say, right. But they are trying, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that it's important. Again, it's so easy for us to just look at our own experience. I am having this experience where I've left my religion and I am so angry at my family for how they have not been welcoming and how they've not been accepting of me. And I'm just like all focused in my own experience. And sometimes we forget that they are people too, and that they might also be feeling rejected by us or abandoned by us, or be having that same fear of like, are you not going to love me now that you're an atheist? Mm-hmm. Am I not going to be welcome in your home? And is, sometimes even just remembering that can soften the edges of that fear and anxiety a little bit and make it a little easier to have some of these conversations with them, to approach them when we remember that they love us and they might be worried also.
Yeah, there was a really good question in the chat that I added for the Q&A, but I feel like it makes more sense to ask now.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the person is asking, what would you recommend when a religion teaches that anyone who leaves is an apostate, and you have to inform family members that you have left and you have no intention of returning, because it does mean that they won't have anything to do with you once they know that you're gone?
This one is so hard and can be really, really painful because depending on the religious group, there are some groups where a person might leave the faith and the family members are, disappointed in you. They wish that you could come back, but they'll still hang out with you and they'll still be family. And there are other religious groups where that distinction between, insider and outsider is so extreme that if you leave, you're then cut out entirely from the family. And I think it makes the pressure so much more intense on people who leave. And the best, without being able to talk to the person who answered the question, I could say for you, take really good care of yourself. Because you've just lost a whole lot, all of your support system and all of your people. And so make sure that you're finding ways to rebuild that, and know that it'll be some pretty intense grief for losing those people. And, if you decide that you're going to, take that step to inform your family members and say, hey, this is what I've decided, whatever. The best that I can suggest is that if you get that one chance or, the couple conversations before they stop speaking with you, to think about how much you love them, what you would want them to know, right? Like if this is the last time that I get to talk to these people, what is it that I want them to know about them and how I feel about them? Even knowing that they might still cut you out. So that might look something like, hey, this is the decision that I've made for myself for, whatever reasons. And I want you to know that I love you so much. I understand you might not want to have me around, but you would always be welcome in my life. I love you. I care about you, whatever. This is you keeping your side of the street clean. So I'm going to meet you halfway. I'm going to let you know that you are welcome anytime in my life. Whatever the things are that you want to say and that feel authentic to you. And then, you have to let go of the outcome and know that they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And it's maybe planting a seed that if things loosen up for them at some time in the future, you would still love them and want to see them. And even if that never happens, it's can you go to sleep at night knowing that you did the best that you could, or that the way that you made that announcement to them and said, goodbye to them or whatever is something that you feel good about how you acted. And I don't know, these are hard things for me to advise on because I am saying these words that I know from my therapist self, like that's the best way to handle it. And there's something about it that just feels so insufficient, because I recognize that we're talking about these really weighty, heavy things that have to do with, people leaving their community and being shunned. And there's like no amount of the right words that's going to make that feel great. Like it's going to feel shitty. Even if you do it exactly perfectly, it's going to be awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's
How's
never
that for a great answer?
It is, yeah, it is, and especially for such a difficult situation, I think. It's a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what about when you just kind of grow apart of other people? Because I guess if you're so involved in a specific religious community and you stop being religious, you may also stop doing the same activities as them. You may develop other hobbies that have nothing to do with them. So, what do you do then? Because I'm not saying, you necessarily hate them or you want them out of your life completely because you have a fundamental moral difference, but just because you just don't feel like you're the same person anymore.
This is a hard one, and it sometimes sneaks up on people later because there's like all of the drama of the coming out and the big changes that you're making in your life and your family adjusting to it and everything. And even when you get to a place that's kind of stable and things are going well, people can be surprised years later when you get together with your family and if the pain feels fresh again, because you realize we've just grown apart. We're such a different people now that maybe if I met you right now, we wouldn't choose to hang out with each other. And not because we're awful people, we just don't have anything in common anymore. There can also be, on this theme of disconnection from people that we love, that there are so many hard feelings, grief, loss, that the fear of the judgment, betrayal, rejection. Sometimes those things are spoken out loud, and sometimes they're unspoken, and the fear of bringing them out into the open is what fuels the disconnection. So the thinking goes something like this, where maybe you were a person who's really important to me. I expect that you're going to disapprove of the changes that I've made in my life. And I don't really want to find that out for sure. And so I'm just going to stay quiet and go under the radar or not bring certain topics up or whatever, because I don't really want to find out. I don't want to make that a reality, to face your disappointment. And then it just becomes this thing where maybe you don't really know why you feel distant from these people, but there's just this disconnection from them. And I'm not here to say that you have to confront all of those things, because you might not. It might not be good for you. You might not be in a place where that's really necessary. And I think that sometimes it's important to name it and just know what's going on. So if you're aware, okay, I'm feeling distant from these people, and part of that is because there's a lot that we don't talk about, and I'm not particularly interested in talking about those things. And maybe that's okay. I'm just going to accept that there is a level of distance here and appreciate how much we, do still show up for each other, or that they haven't completely shunned me or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, I guess those feelings of disconnection can also come from the grief that you experience when you leave a community, that sense of losing your group of friends or your family or that support system that you had before. So that definitely must make it a lot more difficult than just a random, well, I used to like football and I don't like football. It's not the same when your whole life revolves around religion and all your friends and family, you know them because of religion. I mean, not family, obviously, but your friends are because of religion, and all your family activities revolve around that also. I can only imagine that doesn't make it necessarily that much easier.
Right. And there can be a lot of disconnection too, because we're just not very practiced. We're not good at talking about differences and talking about differences respectfully. And I'll be totally honest with you, I know for sure that Americans aren't good at that. And I think that religious Americans especially are not good at that. And so we don't do it. We don't talk to people across lines, whatever those lines are. Or when we try, we make a mess of it. And so then we go, oh, that wasn't fun. I don't want to do that again. And we also sometimes have this expectation that like, I really want to be heard and understood. And so I want to share what's happening in my life and these changes, and I want you to listen to me, but I can't tolerate the same. I don't want to hear about how the thing that you believe in, or, what's happening in your life, because everything's religious and I can't deal with that. And so then we have like increasing numbers of things that are off limits for our family members because we don't know how to talk about them. And sometimes it's just we haven't practiced the skills or developed the stamina. We haven't had enough of these awkward conversations that we're going to talk about in a minute, to give us that confidence that we can talk about hard things. We can disagree about things and still love each other, and still sometimes even feel closer despite the difference, because we feel that like respect and love and admiration as a fellow human, rather than, being too connected with the belief system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
sometimes,
sorry. That's a real pity, because I feel like conversations like that do often lead to like deeper relationships with people that you may not necessarily share the same like certain values with or certain beliefs in, but I didn't know that in American culture that was like a thing of not connecting in that sense. I guess I know it's difficult, but I didn't know that the American
we're real bad at it.
Are you okay? I mean, not that in Spain we're much better, but in the UK where I'm now, but yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's worse in religious communities because we just surround ourselves with people who think the same way that we do. And so then when you find yourself on the outside, nobody has the skills to know how to talk. We just don't know how to do these things. Sometimes this sense of disconnection can be fueled by mistreatment, which is a real thing. This isn't all just like, oh, we need to learn how to talk. Like, that sounds all nice, but it's not all that. Like, sometimes family will treat you poorly when you leave religion. I've heard of people being taken out of wills, like they were previously a godparent, or, the person who would, that's what a godparent is, right? I don't know, that's not part of my religious background, but like the person who's going to step in if something happens to the parents, right? Like you'll be the one who takes care of our kids, and then that person leaves religion, and all of a sudden you can't be trusted with the children anymore. Or, maybe grandparents favor the one set of grandchildren and are much kinder to them and spend more time with them and give them more elaborate gifts or whatever, because they're the good ones who are in the faith, and the kids who have left get treated differently. And that can be like, those things are real and really happen and can be quite painful. And I think it's worth noting here that when we're talking about relationships, there's two sides. And so there's some things that you might be able to do to feel more connected to your family members, to fix your side of the relationship. And it's not all on you. So, some of the disconnection that you might be feeling from your extended family members, or the, disapproval that's coming from the in-laws or whatever, like some of that might happen because they've treated you poorly. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you have to force yourself to feel real close to them or spend a whole lot of time with them when doing that hurts you, because it isn't 100% on you. Sometimes it happens because they're not treating you well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess for those who have children, it must be extra difficult if they are treating your kids differently, because at that point it's no longer just about you, it's also like your very close family. So yeah, I feel like I didn't think about that example, but it does sound really like a really difficult situation to deal with if you have kids.
It's very complicated to be the parent in that situation, because there's a part of you that will like get all activated with your protective side. Like, you don't get to treat my kids poorly. They should be treated just as well as all the other kids. At the same time as you're feeling wounded as the child, why is my parent not loving me as much as they love my siblings? And it's a really complicated, hard place to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So there's one more like source of disconnection, and then I'll talk through some tips on what to do about the disconnection. The other thing is that sometimes when we leave religion, we uncover unhealthy relationship dynamics. Things like abuse, control, manipulation, things that might have been at play all along, but that were masked by religion. So maybe we didn't see them, or we were able to avoid kind of coming up against the worst of those family dynamics, as long as you're playing by the rules, those kind of unspoken family rules. And now that you're different, or now that you've broken the family rules, you might be the recipient of all of that unhealthy stuff. And this can be a really difficult thing for people as well. And this is definitely one of those that like, hey, that's not your fault. And you don't have to fix all of that, disconnection. Like, these abuse and manipulation and power dynamics might have been there all along. And the fact that you are now seeing it and able to name it means the family's mad at you, but that doesn't mean that you caused it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what families will do, is you leave religion, or you just leave the family. You don't even have to leave religion, but whoever the person is who says, hey, you know what, that's kind of fucked up. We shouldn't treat each other this way. This is bad. They will all turn on you and go, no, the problem is you. You need to stop saying those things, and look at how terrible you are, as a way to deflect from them taking responsibility for their own stuff. So just know, if that's happening to you, it is not your fault, even if the whole family system is pointing their finger at you and saying that it's your fault. That's just typical unhealthy family dynamics playing out. It's pretty expected. Yeah.
That's such a recurrent topic. Every time we have an RfRx session, there is at least one person, usually more than one person, that brings up some sort of unhealthy family dynamics. So I think that's definitely like applicable to so many different people, which is really a shame, just to discover just how many like unhealthy dynamics exist within these communities and these families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And often those things go unchecked because religion enables them. Mm-hmm. And lets them continue. And sometimes the people who are in power feel justified in doing whatever it is that they're doing, because their religious beliefs tell them that this is the way that it should be, or they maybe don't have proper checks and balances. Sometimes, depending on how insular the religious groups are, they might not be going to public schools. They might not have, be utilizing social support and resources out there to help families, because they want to keep it all internal, which just sort of further can perpetuate some of these, really abusive and exploitative things that happen in families.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to ask, what tips do you suggest to deal with all of these different ways of disconnection with communities and your friends and family?
Yeah. So first off, because we were just talking about the real messed up stuff, go to therapy. For those things that are the unhealthy family dynamics, like, you might not be able to meditate your way out of that. and getting some good professional support can be really helpful, especially if that's what's going on, is the abusive family situations. And then just, for yourself, for the more, I want to say more normal, the less extreme forms of disconnection. The first thing, again, would be acknowledge the feelings. Just let yourself get clear about what's going on. And I say that not just because I'm a therapist and we always talk about feelings, but really it's this is how you're going to get clear on what exactly the problem is. And when you know what the problem is, it can be you can have some more clarity and direction on what to do about it. So if the situation, the disconnection I'm feeling is that I'm grieving, I'm just really experiencing the loss of my community, then I might handle that differently than if the feeling that I feel is, I don't know what, maybe I'm lost. Maybe my family's actually been really wonderfully supportive and I am confused. I am feeling unmoored because I've changed my belief system and I don't really know how to be in my life anymore. Wow, those are two completely different experiences. And if you're clear about what you're feeling, then you'll have a much better idea about what you need to help that. In addition to the thing I said before, that the difficult feelings don't go away if you ignore them. So that's always the first thing. Acknowledge the feelings, get clear on what is it that's happening for me right now, and then you can have some clarity on what to do next. As far as dealing with your family members in these relationships, turn up the volume on love. And what that means is if you want to be close to these people, if you want to continue in relationship with them, then let them know that. Because of all that stuff that might be unspoken, you're feeling worried, they're feeling worried, whatever, let them know, hey, I miss you. Or I made this change in my life and I still love you. I appreciate you supporting me. Or I'm glad we're still family. Whatever it is that you want to say, make sure that stuff is overt, that you don't just assume that they know or take it for granted, that they will know that you still want to be a part of the family, because they might be feeling rejected and worried, and you can do a lot by just communicating some of that.
Mm-hmm. And going back to the therapy that you mentioned in the more intense cases, I just wanted to remind everyone that in RfR we have the secular therapy project. So if you want to make sure that your therapist is properly licensed and uses only research-based methods, we do have a resource for you. So if you're interested, there's a link that I'll find in a second and just post it in case anyone wants to look at that, because it's a really great way of not wasting your time going around trying to look for therapists that maybe are going to try to make you go back to religion, for example, which isn't ideal in these kind of situations. Right. Yeah, just to.
Or they might diagnose the problem as being, well, you betrayed your family by leaving their religion, so you're the one who needs to change and come back to the religion, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not going to be the kind of help that's going to work for you. Okay, so take care of your side of the street. That's another thing that you can do to help with the disconnection bit, is you just make sure that you're proud of how you're acting, that you are living according to your own values, that you're kind and respectful in how you talk to people. Another thing would be to be open to getting some of your needs met in other places. So you're not 100% belonging in your family anymore. And that doesn't mean that your need for belonging has gone away. So you might need to search out some other groups and places where you get to feel some of that belonging. And you might find some of that in, the groups that RfR is associated with, that were mentioned earlier. And I found that it can be really helpful for people to think about meeting their needs in a variety of ways and not expecting one group or organization to do it all. Sometimes that is, we're just taking our religious thinking with us, where the faith might have taught us that we have the answer to everything. your family, your community, your meaning, your everything, we'll take care of all of it. And we leave religion and we expect that we're going to find some other group that is going to meet all of the needs, just like the religion met all of the needs or told us that it met all of the needs, right? And I want to give you permission to like break free of that thinking a little bit. And so you might get some of your need for belonging met in your extended family. You show up, you look like them, you guys have the same background, you have memories together, there's jokes, like, and some of that can be great. You don't have to lose that because you've also left religion. And you also you might need to feel the sense of belonging ideologically to a community, and that's not going to be your family anymore. And so you find that niche and a group, and you meet that need somewhere else. I also think that it's worth taking time to not look at your family as one great big group and allow the people to be individuals. So you might have received some judgment and rejection from one person, but maybe there was one cousin who was super cool. Maybe one of your siblings is kind of a dick and another one is awesome. You don't have to lose that relationship because the one person was awful to you. So like take some time to think about, like, are there people who are already in your family group who have been accepting and wonderful and loving, and go ahead and just invest a little bit more in those relationships so that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of a thing. And another thing that you can do is communicate your needs. So when we're thinking about these sources of, disconnection, talking about differences, the growing apart, the mistreatment, whatever, if there's something that you really need from your family members, you can tell them what that is. It's up to them. That's their side of the street, right? If they're going to meet your need, they're going to listen to you and take that seriously. But that might be something that's just like, hey, I know that this is hard and I'm feeling this distance between the two of us and I don't like it. And I would like to talk about what some of those things are. Can we do that? Or I don't like how disconnected I feel when we get together and all we talk about is the church stuff. It would mean a lot to me if we could talk about other things sometimes too. And you communicate the need and then you pay attention. And you'll see that some of your families might ignore it and dismiss it. And there might be one or two people who heard you and make a conscious effort to switch the topic of conversation, to talk to you, like start up a conversation with you about what's going on with work or something that's not religious. And then you go, that's the person that you hold on to. That's the person that you invest in because you told them what you needed and they heard you and they took it seriously. And then they're standing up for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I really liked how you said that you shouldn't take all your friends and family in one like group that is like you can pick certain individuals that meet your needs better than others and that are more open to you living religion. So yeah, I think that's definitely super useful.
Yeah, and you may be surprised to find that there are some people who you thought would be really cool who turn out not to be, and your relationship with them kind of tapers off. And there's other people who really surprise you in how much they, love you and support you and still show up for you, even when you know that it might be hard for them to do that. If you're open to the possibility, you might find opportunities for, again, some deeper connection, like we mentioned before.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in the topic of awkward conversations, because now with COVID, I think a lot of us have managed to avoid certain family members that we may not necessarily be super willing to meet. But 2021, hopefully, we will have to see them. So do you have any tips on how to avoid these sort of, really awkward conversations or situations or difficult family members?
Well, my suggestion is you're not going to get to avoid it. Basically, having religious extended family members or in-laws and enjoying spending time with them, letting them be part of your full, rich life means that you're going to have some awkward conversations. And so just get used to it, or embrace it, or maybe don't even embrace it, but get rid of the expectation that you won't ever have to have these types of awkward conversations. And there's a few ways that these come up. I think it comes up a lot, at least as far as the people that I see in my practice, who the issues that they come to me with, hey, help me out with this, we don't know how to handle it, is often around holidays or like rites of passage. What do we do are we going to bless the child? Is the child going to have a bar mitzvah or a communion or a baptism, or, whatever the thing is within the community? And those can be really places where the disconnection shows up. That can be places where all that judgment shows up. And it's also the core of the awkward conversations that you're going to have with people. I know one person who said that she experienced quite a bit of pain when her family stopped inviting her to the rites of passage where the family gathered, because they were things that happened at the church and they were religious rites of passage. And she says, I left the church, not the family. Like, I still care about you. I don't believe in the religion anymore, but I don't want to be left out of the family. And, sometimes, so that's on the one end, right? Is that you might not want to be left out of things. And on the other side, you might show up to a holiday gathering because it's Christmas or it's Thanksgiving or it's, mind is blanking, Ramadan, or, whatever the things are where you would normally gather with your family. And it's almost like the religious stuff gets forced upon you, or, surprise, there's no way to interact with them without there being prayer or some other thing, right? You think that you're getting together to exchange gifts, and then grandpa pulls out the Bible and all of a sudden you're in the middle of some kind of lesson and you're like, I didn't sign up for this. They ambushed me, right? And the thing is, like with any of these things, you get to decide how you want to handle it. And then you have to communicate that to the people. The deciding how you want to handle it, again, I'll reference the boundaries talk that we did before. And you just have to let people know, right? Some people you might decide, whatever, it's the holiday, that's just what we do. I don't love it, but I'm going to let it go and not say anything about it, and I don't care. Or you might decide that it makes you really uncomfortable and you do want to say something about it and you do want to make a request. Can we, shift or do these things a little bit different way or whatever? And that's totally fine. But you have to let the other people know how you're feeling, what your expectations are, offer some alternative or give them some choices for how it maybe could work better for you, or, whatever that is. And that's the awkward conversation part, is making that request to change, or letting them know that the thing that they love so much and the way that the family has always done things isn't going to work for you anymore.
Yeah, my first question in the whole awkward thing was how to deal when you are ambushed, as you said, like when, you just arrived, you go in with the best of intentions, try to make amends and make sure everyone knows that you still love them, but they just don't let you do that. So yeah, I think there were some great tips. I know you mentioned that we should go back to the boundaries talk, and I definitely encourage everyone to do so. It's up on YouTube. But do you want to just give very brief, superficial typs, or maybe some sort of advice on how to set those boundaries? Nothing too deep, because we do have the other talk, but just an overview of it.
Yeah. So, anything like that is, you first need to take the time to get clear on what's going on for you. Why does this thing bother me? What's the change that I'm asking for? Or am I even asking for a change? Am I just asking for understanding? You need to get clear with yourself first so that you can go forward and then ask for what you want and need. and do that in a way that is kind and respectful to the other person and maximizes the chance that they will want to and be able to give you the thing that you asked. The thing I see where a lot of people go wrong, and I see this in the mixed faith families that I work with, and also just general couples therapy, is that most people don't spend enough time getting clear on what they want and need first. And so what comes out to their family member is like a messy first draft. They're just kind of spitballing things out loud, and then the family is like hurt or confused or doesn't know what to do or whatever. And then a big argument can ensue, and now you have hurt feelings to clean up with, whatever. But yeah, if you take a little bit of time to think about, something like a thing, I don't know, just that example, you show up and we thought that we were doing this thing, and now grandpa's got the religious text out and we're, doing something. It's okay to not handle it right in that moment. If you're having a huge emotional reaction to something, your emotions are processed in a different part of your brain than you do logical thinking and perspective taking and, creative thinking and all that kind of stuff. And when your emotions are heightened, you sometimes, if it's to a big enough level, you sometimes can't access those parts of your brain that's up here in your neocortex where you do that type of thinking. And so it really might be the best thing to just go, whoa, I'm feeling some strong feelings about this, and I'm going to have to think about that later. Because you might not be able to think clearly and feel deeply at the same time. So it's okay to let it go in the moment and then get curious later and go, what was that about? Why did I have that big of a reaction? What's really going on there? And then you can decide, this is how I want to handle it. And then you might be able to next time you go to the event, know how you're going to handle it. You may just decide, if it happens again, now I know what I would do. Or you might decide, I need to sit down with grandpa and say, hey, if this is something that you want to do, could you please give me a heads up? It was upsetting because I was surprised by it. And I know that that's something that's important to you. I'm not asking you to take it away, but could you not do it while I'm there? Or could you please tell me in advance? Or could you say, hey, this is what's going to happen, so that I can decide if I want to stay for that or not stay for that or whatever. So yeah, I guess that's in a nutshell. Get clear about what you want or how you're feeling, and then decide what you want. And then you can take a step to communicate that to the people that you care about.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. That's exactly what I was asking. So perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Another awkward situation is gifts. This is where we were going next.
Yep.
Yeah. Where the family might give you or your children religious themed gifts. And again, you get to decide what you want to do, and then you have to let them know. You might take the approach of the Marie Kondo approach to, I don't know if you have read the Magic of Tidying Up book, where you go, wow, I love that this person thought about me. Thank you. This gift has served its purpose in that they were thoughtful and gave me a gift, and I am free to let it go and put it in the trash later, right? You can totally do that and it's fine. Or you could say, these things really are not welcome and they cause, whatever feelings in me, just like we talked about. You get clear about what it is, and then, communicate the thing, and then you get to tell that to your family. Please don't give our children these types of gifts. Or this is, one of my tips, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I think it's great to give people choices. So if you say something, I'm thinking especially as a parent, if the extended family is giving your children gifts that are religious themed, you might say something to them like, hey, whatever your reasons are, we love that you love them and care about them. You're welcome to give whatever gifts you want. And we want you to know that if these certain types of things won't be accepted into the house. So we might not even let the kids read the book that you gave us. You're welcome to give it if you need to do that, but just know that this is how we handle those things, that like the children won't ever receive it. Or if you really want to give a gift that teaches some kind of, moral things, like check with us first so that we can say yes or no, or, whatever. So you're not telling them that these are the things that you're allowed to do, but you're saying, hey, this is where our boundary is. All of these other things are okay. Here are the choices that we would be happy with. And then the other person, you might not have as strong a reaction of them feeling controlled, where you are acknowledging the kindness of the gift, you're acknowledging the intention, you're acknowledging how the family member is caring for you and investing in the relationship. And like, that's part of turning the volume up on love, letting them know that you appreciate all of those things. It's just this one little part about that isn't okay. And then you can set your boundary and say either, don't do it, or these types are acceptable, or, whatever.
Yeah, give a more positive light to a difficult and, in a way, in their view, I guess, restrictive situation where they may not be able to give you certain gifts or certain topics or things like that. So yeah, I think giving that positive view of it will definitely help and make them feel more welcome. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's important in these situations too to presume good intent. Remember that these are people who love you, or who are supposed to love you, and presume that they also want to have a great relationship with you. And if you go into that with that mindset, this person, my in-laws, my spouses or my partner's parents, they care about me, they love me, they want to feel close to us. And if I go in to a boundary setting situation with that mindset, I'm probably going to be a lot gentler in how I say what I need to say. And it'll be a lot easier for me to remember that stuff of like, hey, these are the things that we appreciate. This is the stuff that's welcome or whatever. And I want you to know that this is not okay. And this is how that impacts me. Right? When you insist on certain things, or when you say this certain phrase, it really hurts me. And when I say it that way, I'm presuming that they care about me and that they don't want to hurt me. And so it's a good thing for the relationship for me to tell them, hey, this particular behavior has an impact on me and it's painful. And so could you please not do that? Or could you not use this particular phrase or something, because that's painful, which is very different than coming at that person with being like, you judgmental piece of shit. How dare you do that? You keep your religion to yourself. I don't want that garbage around me. Where if you're presuming that they are rejecting, if you're presuming that they're judging you, if you're presuming that they tolerate you and don't really want to have you around, you're more likely to come at them in that more aggressive way. And you'll do a lot of good for your relationship if you can go, again, regardless of whether it's true or not. Hopefully it is, but it's going to be better for you and for keeping your side of the street clean and for you feeling good about the way that you interact with them if you go in with the presumption that they love you, they care about you, they also want to have a good relationship, even though you now have this difference between you.
Yeah, I guess you can go home with a clear consciousness after, because then you know that you've done everything that you could. And if they haven't reacted, then if they haven't reacted well, then what can you do? Like, it's, you've done all your best, and that's all you can really try to do, because you can't change other people's behavior. So yeah, I think it's a great way of trying to make sure that you have done everything you could and just be in peace with yourself. Yeah,
exactly. Some other little like tips for what to do. Oh yeah, going back to that, my example of the person who said I left the church, not the family. If there's something that you want or don't want, you just tell the people, hey, I noticed this thing happening and I want you to know, like, yeah, I left the church, but I still want to receive invitation to those things because I love you all. Or you might be in a completely different situation and you really wish they would stop inviting you to all the things. And if that's the situation that you're in, again, presume that they love you and they care about having a good relationship with you. And you can just tell them, hey, I'd love to be invited to the barbecue and the dinner and the get together things, but you can leave me off of the emails or texts that invite me to the faith-based things. Great. You just have to let them know. Again, we talked about turning up the volume on love. We've talked about giving choices. So this was something that came from a real life example where, the family is visiting and there can be this awkwardness of like, well, they're going to want to go to religious services and we don't want to go with them, but how do we have a conversation about, what that is in a respectful sort of way and, whatever. And sometimes it could just be something that's like, hey, we know this is that you would normally attend church on Sunday morning. In our plans for when you're visiting us, we'll make sure that there's, time in our schedule to do that. We won't schedule anything else at that time so that you can go do that if you want to. You might not even need to say, we're not going with you. Just say, we'll make space for that so that it doesn't have to become a difficult thing. Or you might kindly communicate while we're here visiting for the holiday, like, we're not going to be attending church with you. And maybe while you're gone, we will make a lovely breakfast and we'll be happy to, welcome you home for brunch when you're, you add a little bit of sweetness there to let them know that you care about them, you value the relationship, you want to spend time with them. And our boundary is that we won't be participating in this particular event. Mm-hmm. I think it can go a long way to be willing to do some education for your family. So if you're changing the way that you celebrate holidays, if you're changing the way that you do things in your home, if you're doing some kind of different rite of passage for your wedding or how you're doing a funeral or how you're, what you're doing for your children or something, like tell people what to expect so that they know how to show up for you. Maybe you're not doing a traditional baby blessing type thing that would be done in your church's or your family's tradition, but you want to do something else to welcome and celebrate the birth of a child. Okay, great. Go ahead and plan that thing. Plan the birthday party, plan the coming of age ritual for your teenager, whatever it is. And then you just let your family know, this is what we're doing and this is why, and this is how you can support us, or this is what to do to prepare to show up. Because it might not be that they don't care about you and they don't want to support you. They just don't know what to do. They don't have any conception of what a wedding looks like that's not a religious wedding. And so you might need to spend a little bit of time to let them know this is how it's going to be and this is what you can prepare for so that you calm their anxiety and include in there, we really want you to be there because you're important people to us. We love you.
I love that because as a control freak, I can only imagine how much I would panic if I was a religious person and going to an atheist event for the first time and thinking, what should I dress like? What should I do? What should I say? What's going to happen? So I love that. That's such a good way of welcoming them to your world instead of just they say, no, this is my world. You can't come in and welcoming to you. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. And lastly, listen. So many of us, when we leave religion, what we want is we need somebody to hear our story. We've gone through so much pain in all of these changes, and we just want someone to understand, to see us, to validate and accept us. And we can give that back to our family members too. Listening is an act of love. Your family will be more willing to compromise with you and to respect your boundaries and the decisions that you make and the changes that you're putting into your life when they feel seen and heard by you too. And if you need some little helpers to help you be a good listener, summarize. So the person says something to you, okay, so what you're saying is, and you repeat back to them. or what you heard them say. Did I get it right? Okay, so you feel upset. You feel like I rejected you when I left the church. Is that what's going on? Yeah. Okay. You don't have to make their rejection better. You don't have to do anything to stop that feeling in them. You just let them know that you understand. This is really okay. So you feel really sad because you wish that at this age our child was going through whatever ritual that would make them an official member of the faith community. And you're feeling a lot of grief around that. That's what's going on? Yeah, that's what's it. Sorry you feel that way. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry that our changes brought that grief to you. I love you so much. I wish that I could save you from the grief. You don't have to attack their beliefs. You don't have to do anything around it. You just have to let them know that you get it. You see them and see how they feel. If they're giving you these, pressure to change, you might say something like, okay, so just to be clear, this is what you're saying, and you want me to, whatever, and you fill in. But yes, that is what I'm asking you to do. That doesn't mean that you, my secular, formerly religious friends, have to do the thing that they want you to do, but it might do quite a bit for your relationship that you can communicate to your family. I understand what it is that you're asking. Then you might say, I can't do that, or I won't do that for these reasons, and I still love you. I still care about you. I still want to have a great relationship. Sometimes one of the best things that you can do is just say, if they're saying something that's real hard, you go, okay, is there anything else that you'd like to say? I'm hearing you, I'm listening. Is there anything else that you need to tell me? Right. Great.
Love that. We're coming up to the end of the discussion part before we go to the Q&A. So is there any last words? I always say last words. It's such an awful connotation to it, but do you have any last words to close the session?
The last thing that I would want to say is we've been doing all this conversation about your family, your extended family, your in-laws, how you can preserve relationships with them or maintain relationships with them or whatever. And I think that it's worth saying that it's okay to have a chosen family too. That you might build family type relationships with people who are not your blood relatives, and that can be just as fulfilling for your life and getting all of those needs met. And that can be a really beautiful, lovely thing as well.
That's such a beautiful way of closing it. Yeah, thank you so much. Cool.
I'm ready for questions now. What do we have?
Yeah, we have a lot of them. So just a heads up, thank you for all of you who have submitted questions. I don't think we'll have time to answer all of them, but we'll do our best. Someone is asking, how do you compromise? There is either a hell or there is not. It's Rosenberg's hell. So I guess the question, and whoever's asked this can correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess the question is more like, how can you compromise generally in when you know that something objectively is false, like there is no hell, that is a fact. How can you compromise on something that's not an opinion? It's more like just a fact of life.
That's interesting, because I don't think of compromise as being that we're going to meet in the middle on ideas or concepts, but the compromise might be more in how are we going to treat each other? What are we going to do? Like the compromise is in the action in our lives. You can think that there's a hell and I can think that there's not a hell. And what does that mean about showing up for family dinner? maybe where the things actually play out might be something like prayer, or it might show up in how we the religious rituals that we attend, or whether there is alcohol on our dinner table or something like that. And like those are areas where you can have some compromise, but there really isn't a compromise on the other things. And I don't think that there has to be, because you can allow them to think what they think and you can think what you think. And then we have to meet in the middle on where we're going to go for dinner or how we're going to celebrate a holiday.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Medelin, do you want to take the next one, please?
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. The next question is, this person says, I'm certain that before we get to understanding and communication, we must go through a blow up. In your experience, how often does reconciliation successfully follow an argument?
I am not certain that there has to be a blow up and an argument. I think there probably has to be a conversation, and there does have to be some understanding and communication, which might be something of like understanding each person's sides. What's your position on this, and what's mine. And I think that can happen without there being an argument. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but when I hear a blow up, I'm thinking about a shouting match, like a big argument, feelings are hurt, whatever. I think that it's possible for us to have conversations about these difficult topics without there being disrespect, criticism, shouting at each other, hurt feelings. I think that all is possible. And I think that when that is done well, there isn't really reconciliation to happen, because it is the process of talking through the difficult things, showing respect, doing that listening stuff that I talked about, where you're communicating that you understand them and you're getting that understanding back. Like, it is the conversation and the getting that stuff out that brings you together. So there isn't really reconciliation to happen. But that's me being, that's best case scenario, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and a follow-up to that question, which kind of works beautifully, is how can we deal with our emotions in that moment? So a lot of times you have a very strong emotional response or affective response to your family or a family member or friend saying something. How can we control that better? Because it can be quite difficult to keep calm and deliver a message of love when you're feeling very, very emotional.
Yeah. I don't think that you have to be calm. I think the best thing to do is to acknowledge what's happening. And maybe even practice in advance, like have a few phrases in your pocket for like, this is what I know I would say. Even if you can't even name the emotion in the moment, you can be like, wow, I'm having a big reaction to that. I'm having some big feelings about this. And maybe what that is, maybe you even say like, I'm super angry and I might regret what I'm going to say right now. Or you might say, I'm having big feelings about this and I don't want to hurt you. I know that I'm not thinking clearly right now. And so we have to table this because I care about you too much to like charge ahead and know that I might regret what's about to come out of my mouth. Or it's okay even to say, I'm having huge feelings about this right now, and I don't know how to put all of that into words. And so I need a minute. Or I need to come back to this later. And you see what people say. You might have families who will go, oh, okay. And they get softer and they want to take some time to like, wow, okay, tell us what's going on. And they can be part of helping you think through and talk through your feelings. And that would be wonderful. And if your family isn't like that, then the best thing might be to acknowledge that you're feeling something intensely and to table it and take the time to get clear with yourself and come back to that conversation later.
Yeah, that worked great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and would you say it almost ties into this following question? How do you express straightforward criticism that can't be expressed without sounding harsh? Like if you think they're believing something harmful, do you say that? How do you say that without hurting the person?
Yeah, okay. I think that it is possible to express straightforward criticism without being harsh. And I think a lot of that has to do with tone of voice. A lot of that has to do with acknowledging impact. And I think it has to do too with that turning the volume up on the love, making sure that it's couched in a way that you say, hey, this is a really uncomfortable conversation. I know that what I'm going to say might hurt your feelings, or that you might not like to hear what I have to say. And I think that there's something that's harming you. And I need to tell you about it because I care about you so much. I know you might not agree, but because I love you so much, I couldn't live with myself if I just let this harm go on and I didn't at least say something. So I want to tell you this because I care about you and I love you. And then you get to decide what you're going to do with it. This is how I hope you would act. You make your own choices, but I feel like I've done my job in caring for you, in being a good friend, a good sister, a good, whoever, by letting you know that this is what I see. That's how I would do it.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. We have someone else asking a more of a particular question, but like a specific question to themselves, but I feel like it can apply to quite a lot of people. So what if your parents or other family members have health problems and you're afraid that knowing more about your beliefs will cause them health problems, or their health problems to be worsened by it?
Oh, that's hard. Is the question, if I tell them what's going on with me, that would cause them so much stress that might worsen their condition? Am I understanding the question correctly? Okay.
If I'm understanding it correctly, then yeah.
Okay. if we both got you right. Okay. I don't know. I think that, if this is your situation, then you maybe take some time. If I were your therapist, I would sit down with you and we would do a sort of pro and con list. Okay. If you decide to tell them, what are the benefits of that? You might feel some relief. You might feel, whatever the things are. What are the drawbacks of doing that? And then if you don't say anything, what are the benefits of that? Maybe parents' health is preserved. And what are the drawbacks of saying nothing? Well, you might continue with this disconnection. You might feel inauthentic when you're around them. You might whatever. And, really take some time to think through what those things are. You might come back around to what are your own values? How do you want to live your life? What are the values that you live your life by? To help you in making that decision. And then the reality is that neither choice is great. And so you have to decide which of the negative consequences you can live with. But that's a rough position to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, I wouldn't fault you either way, whatever you decided there.
Yeah.
So I have another family-oriented or family situation question, and we understand you're not our therapist here, so thank you for taking a stab at these. So for this, the caller, their mother outed them to their grandmother. There's some dynamics there. The grandmother immediately said that this is not what they were taught when growing up, and they better not let her say that, and threatened with anger and violence. And the caller's question is, really, they'd rather have their grandmother's love and not know about the lack of religion rather than have a future of her judging or trying to convert them. But I know that part of the beginning statement is that they've already been outed to their grandmother. So I guess how would you handle that situation, or how should they handle that?
Well, that's tough because a big part of that is already outside of your control because mom took that away from you and now grandma knows. Some of how you handle that might depend on personalities, because your family might be one where you could say something like, hey grandma, how about we just go ahead? How about we just pretend like that didn't happen? I just won't talk about this with you, and will you not give me all the reminders to go to church, and don't worry, I'm fine. And grandma might be like, okay, cool, right? I know some people in my own extended family who would just rather not know. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we can be happy showing up and talking about old memories and looking at pictures, and that will be fine. If your family's not going to be cool with that, or they're not going to just let it slide, you might have to have one of those more direct, uncomfortable conversations where you say something. Again, I would emphasize so much grandma and how much you want her love. Hey, grandma, I understand that my mom told you this. I wish that she hadn't. It was my plan not to tell you because I love you so much and your love and approval means so much to me. And I had really hoped that we could just go along because, you know, that's what I love about being together with you and all those things. And now that it's out there, is there anything that you want to tell me? I'm here to listen. Or, you know, maybe you say, I understand that this has disappointed you, and I want you to know that I still want you to be a part of my life. And, you know, whatever other things that you might say. It's hard for me to say exactly that there's one right way to do this because so much of it depends on, you know, the personalities of the people involved, what exactly the religious tradition is, maybe even how old grandma is, how close you are to her. Like there's so much in there that's hard for me to say there's a right way.
This is good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. That's all the time we have for questions today. Okay. Unfortunately, I know there's still a few that we couldn't answer, but we're just running out of time, really. So
no problem.
Thank you so much for coming here today. And again, another week. I know you're super busy, and RfRx sessions do carry quite a lot of behind the scenes work and also obviously being here. So thank you so much. That was a wonderful session. I could tell by the comments that, you know, people were really benefiting from your talk. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I love being here with you guys.
Yeah, no
problem. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Rebecca.
Cool. So next week, we're going to come back again with another RfRx talk. And we're going to have the topic of cognitive dissonance, why it's so hard for humans to change their minds. And we're going to have Casey Hodos, which, yeah, for all of you guys who have been here before, you probably know who she is because she has been here before. She's a fellow therapist as Rebecca. And we're going to discuss the evolutionary origins of cognitive dissonance, how it relates to religion and mental health, and how can we deal with it once we identify that it's there. So I think it's going to be amazing. Again, a reminder that if you want to send us any feedback, any ideas for guests or any topics, anything at all, we have an email address, and that is rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And if you want to watch any of our previous RfRx sessions, you can do so in our YouTube channel. This one will also be uploaded. So if you arrived late or if you had to leave early, yeah, this will also be there. And then I'm going to let our amazing, lovely, wonderful Gayle do her RfR minute.
Thank you, Amaia. Thank you so much. Everybody remember that Amaia, it's not just the middle of the night for her. I think it's about 3 o'clock in the morning for her, and week after week after week, she makes the decision to join us at this time of the day. So thank you, Amaia, for that. Rebecca, what an incredible program. What a presentation. You softened my heart a little bit. And when you use expressions like turning up the love and getting us to feel and remember what our loved ones are experiencing, because we know what's driving their fear. We know what's driving their emotion. They're terrified. And that is helpful for us to see it from their perspective. So thank you for that presentation. It bears repeating again several times. In the chat, there were questions regarding what our online community is and what that's like. And so let me repeat again for you, this online community that we have, there's no public access to it. You can probably, if you think for just a minute or two, you can probably figure out why we do it this way. When someone reaches out to us, either through the telephone or through the internet chat, and we have a conversation with them, and we as trained agents get the impression that they might need a little bit more community. They might need a little bit of support. They might want to talk to somebody. We as agents don't do a lot of self-disclosure about our own experience, not because we don't want to share it, but because we want to make sure that we're focused on the client. And sometimes the client wants that. They want to hear back from someone who's experienced this or is experiencing this. We then invite them to join us on our online community. And in our online community, there are several different, let's just call them groups. We call them channels, different groups that they can choose. They self-select which communities you want to belong to. And there's no limit. If you want to join ex-Baptist or ex-Mormons or whatever your background is, and LGBT and maybe former military and whatever it is that appeals to you where you want to have a conversation, we then send you an invitation to come in there. We're just trying to put one level of security over that so that it's not a public facing thing where people can come in and constantly harass you. We're trying to provide as much protection as possible. That's what our online community is. And for those of you who are experiencing all the things that Rebecca shared with us tonight about the isolation and the loss and the grief, I hope that the online community would give you a place to express that, to hear stories from other folks who are maybe a little farther down the road, to give you some encouragement, to offer some resources. So please, at the very least, consider joining us for one of those. When when the era of COVID comes to an end, our local support groups will be meeting in person. And that's another fabulous resource for you to begin to build your life without church, without religion. And so right now, all those groups are meeting online, and you're welcome to join those groups. That's another way. They're smaller scale than what we're doing here, but it's similar. And it's a time where you can express and share things. I took way more than a minute. Come to the website, recoveringfromreligion.org. In there, you'll find all of the events that we have going on. You'll find an opportunity, you'll find out how to volunteer. If you choose to volunteer, you'll find out how to donate if you'd like to donate. And you'll find all the information about our upcoming RfRxs. Thank you again for attending tonight, for participating tonight. Rebecca, thank you again. And Medelin and Amaia, and I believe Rob and Kara are all of our folks that are going to be helping us tonight. Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you next time.